Alright guys, so it's been a while since the X3 has had any major issues. So I'm here to catch you guys up on a little bit of story time on a little bit of blown diff off-road action. So unfortunately, got some front diff issues going on. If you guys didn't watch the Tackett Creek Royal Blue series that we did, just not too much. We went down there with family. So my parents had never ridden before. If you guys didn't catch the videos, I'll catch up to speed a little bit. My parents were riding the Talon. I had my daughter, who's 1.5, on the bump seat in the X3. And then Josh had his daughter, who is a little over 2 years old, riding with him, and we both had our wives. So we weren't doing anything crazy. We were just riding around at Royal Blue. Never even locked the diff on the X3 because we were just doing scenic trails, just cruising around, and yeah, that was about it. Then the next day that we went riding, we went down to Tackett Creek. We went down to like the Sand Cave Overlook thing they call it, Sand Cave Scenic Spot or whatever. And there's some ledges down there that you can kind of play around on. So I threw it in diff lock and I was going to climb one of those ledges. Actually, let me back up. We were on the slate rock wall and I noticed it seemed like I struggled a little bit harder than I should have. Still crawled it, but it just didn't feel like all four were pulling, and then like the steering wasn't hard like it is when it is in diff lock. So anyways, kind of noted it there. I'm like, man, I don't know, maybe I just didn't wait long enough to let it lock in, but definitely noticed something weird on the slate rock. Then we were down by those sand caves, locked in diff lock, and I noticed it definitely didn't lock in again that time, and that's when I was like, all right, something's up, you know. So then I played around with it for 10-15 minutes trying to get it to lock in. Drove around a bit with the diff lock switch up in lock, and it never locked in. So at that point I was like, all right, something's messed up. I'm gonna turn the diff lock switch off, just enjoy the rest of this day with the family, and wheel and three-wheel drive or open front diff. So I guess I should mention also, if you guys aren't all up to speed on the build of this X3 that's on the channel, it's got a Halo 30 front diff, which is a full billet, like nasty built diff. It is not a smart lock anymore, so it's basically just like a Jeep or something with a normally open front end with spider gears that each axle can spin individually, etc. To kind of explain it in the simplest form, it's an open diff. You push a button, it's got an electric actuator. It plunges over like a solenoid, and it will lock the pins into the diff. So pretty straightforward and simple deal. And so my first thought was, all right, maybe it's the actuator, because when I flipped the switch, it sounded like the actuator was struggling to lock in. So when we got back that day, I put it on the trailer, pulled the actuator off, hit the switch, and even still the actuator sounded like it was weak or broken as it was. So I was like, all right, probably just an actuator, cool. Bolted it back up. Me and Josh went to Tackett Creek the next day again, and we just hit some gnarly trails. The wives and kids didn't go with, so we went up No Business, Hell's Canyon. Beat this thing down pretty decent because it didn't have a locking front diff at that time, so had to beat her down a little extra, and had a blast. No crunchy noises, no weird popping or anything felt in the front end. So I was like, diff's probably not broken, probably was just the actuator. So fast forward to today, I got a new actuator in the mail today, bolted it on. Actuator sounds great now, but it still didn't lock the diff in. So then I threw it up in the lift quick and drained the oil. It's got a little bit of metal shavings in the oil, but to be honest, it kind of always does. And I think a lot of stuff does, just with the tolerances being so tight. And I don't know, maybe that's my lack of knowledge there, but a little bit of metal shavings, I don't know, definitely wasn't chunks, which I was not expecting to see, but a blown diff might be that, you know. So moving forward, basically I'm pulling the diff out. I don't know what's wrong with it. I don't think it's physical carnage like with the spider gears or the ring gear, because even in open diff, I really feel like you'd feel that. So basically gonna throw this thing up on the lift, get to tearing it down, and hopefully find the issue. I don't think it's electronic, because the new actuator, when I put it in, plug it in, sounds great, actuates just fine. Doesn't sound strange or anything like that. So it's got to be something inside the diff not allowing it to lock in, is my theory. I don't think it's going to be broken spider gears, which is you know, the common issue with these that I hear. One more thing before I get to the time lapse of tearing this rig apart. I did break, so there's 4 pins on the first generation of these Halo 30s that lock the front 2 sides together. It's like a 4-pin system. When they line up, they lock in, and then all that load is on those 4 pins. I broke those pins like the first trip out with the Halo 30, and since then upgraded it to the 6-pin design, and haven't had any issues since. The thing's been great. Just wanted to mention that because I don't know what we're going to find inside of there, but I do know that they upgraded the 6-pin design to an 8-pin design. And when we get this diff torn down, I'll explain to the best of my knowledge how it all works, and that way you guys can see the inside of a Halo 30. But when I broke those pins, it stuck locked, whereas now I'm stuck open. So I don't think it's I don't think it's the same issue. I don't think I broke those pins, but who knows? We'll see once we get it torn down. Just wanted to jump in here to show you guys this light from a company called O-Light. This light is called the Marauder Mini. As you can see here, we used it out on our Windrock trip. That's where this footage is from. We did a lot of night wheeling. The thing impressed everyone. It lit up the whole trails. It's pretty small and fits in your hand, as you can see in this picture, and fits good in the glove box of your machine. Lasted an entire night of wheeling with no charges, just one full charge in the beginning. If you guys are interested in a light like this, use the affiliate link down below in our description, and they've got a sale running for Black Friday from 11/23, which is today, until 11/28, which is Monday. If you guys go through that link, you'll get a free small miniature flashlight that's good for like keychains. You'll also get 30% off. If you guys are interested, check it out. I know everybody on the trip was pretty impressed with it. We did want to get some real world testing underway before we brought it to you guys, just to make sure we really liked it. All right, back to the video. So we got one side tore apart, pulled the shock off here, ratchet strapped it up to the cage just to get it out of the way. Then I separated this lower ball joint, just pounded that down. I also strapped this upper A-arm up to the cage there just as support, so I could just hit that down, as you guys probably seen in the time lapse. Then that popped down, then pull the brake caliper off, which is 215 mils. And then axle nut, pop all that apart, pull the axle out. I did start to pull the axle, and I could tell that it seemed like it was going to pull out of the CV. So I actually used one of these little baby pry bars and put it right behind the axle and just helped a little bit. And the axle stayed intact, didn't pull apart. If you guys have worked on these things, I'm sure you know how much of a bummer it is when you pull your axle out of the diff and the freaking CV pulls apart. So anyways, got the axle out in one piece. Just swing this lower A-arm down. This does have CT Raceworx lowers and stock upper A-arm still, miraculously. OEM ball joints still in this unit. Hanging in there, let me tell you. It's probably due for a refresh here pretty shortly, but it's hard to fix something that ain't broke, you know? But it also has CT Raceworx front gusset kit, as you can kind of see there. Maybe some of that stuff's all bent up a little bit. All this bracketry is still fine, which is actually what I've got to pull apart. So from what I understand, I just got to pull this drive shaft off, and then I got to pull these 2 brackets out of the way, which is the gusset kit, which is just two bolts on there for this piece that bolts into this guy, and then this one is just these two bolts up here where my finger is, and then both those brackets will come out. But first we got to take apart the passenger side. Basically the same thing I just did here on that side, and then we can get to pulling those brackets off the diff, pull the drive shaft off, and then we'll have to pull the bottom diff bolts out, and that should be it in theory. We'll see how it goes. That way you don't pull this joint apart, just strictly pulling on the joint. It can pop off. The CV itself can pop off the axle shaft. It's just a little clip just like that holds the CV together. And then you got to do axle surgery on top of all this. So I just like to kind of help it out of the diff with a little pry bar. Alright, so here's the gusset kit from CT Raceworx that I was telling you guys about. This piece goes on the back just like this. This sandwiches through. It's hard to point, film, hold things. This part of it sandwiches through the front upper A-arm bolts. And then the back, that is your upper A-arm mount there. And it goes through the frame as well. This piece bolts up into those upper holes, blah, blah, blah. Gussets this whole thing across there, across the bulkhead basically. But that's what we had to remove to get room to get this diff out. And then I think all we got left is we got to bump the skid plate down a little bit so I can get the diff bolts out. And then we just got to get this drive shaft off, which hopefully I can just pull this bolt. And I think there's enough splines to where I can just slide it back off of the pinion and not have to mess with the carrier bearing or anything. That's the goal. Well, I went to take that nut off for the drive shaft. It's just a through bolt through there. Snap the bolt right off with a little tiny impact gun. That's interesting. Hopefully we can still bump that bolt out of there and then just throw a new bolt in. But we shall see. I'm about to try and see if I can get the bolt out the rest of the way, even with it broke. It broke like effortlessly, so that's slightly concerning. Should be good though. Yeah, that bolt's not seized in there or nothing crazy. Should be able to pull that right out of there. Yeah, alrighty. Which the pinion's splined into the drive shaft, so I mean the bolt's really just stopping the drive shaft from going, like moving around in there. It doesn't serve that much of a purpose, but interesting nonetheless. So hopefully we can just slide this off of there. I'm not 100% sure on this part, but that's definitely the goal. So we got to move it quite a bit, as you guys can kind of see there, but it's kind of bound up back there, so it might be hitting the carrier bearing now. So hopefully once I get these bottom diff bolts out, that I'll be able to just roll the diff off the drive shaft the rest of the way. Alright, well, here she is. Moment of truth. I'm gonna bust out this passenger side cover first, and because I think that's where the problem will lie, because that's the side with the actuator. So I'm hoping there's some sort of issue with the way that the actuator locks the diff together. So I'm gonna buzz these cover bolts off and see what's going on. All right, so just got some bolts chilling in here, which is always good. This is like this, which I believe it just fell down. I don't know if that's damaged. Sorry for shoddy filming. I'm trying to, it's kind of hard by myself to kind of hold everything the way I want it and try and figure out what's happening right now. Oh, all right, so that was just kind of slid out of there. Gotta get that shim back in there. Oh, that seems good. So this is what would rotate. Okay. So these are the ring gear bolts, I believe. All right, let me take a look at this and then I'll get back with you guys. All right, so after looking at this, I just want to kind of give you guys a rundown on how this works. So the actuator, the electronic actuator, pushes right on here with spring pressure, pushes this in, and when that pushes in, it pushes this collar, so you can kind of see there. And that collar, this fell out, of course. This slides on this U-shaped collar here. So when you push this in, it's pushing these pins. It's pushing these pins up against this piece. And as this rotates, your axle's going here. Well, there's one on this side, one on the other side. And then as soon as those line up, it will lock into these grooves. So when I referred earlier in this video to how I broke the 4-pin design in the very beginning of me running a Halo, that's what I was referring to. The very first Halo, they made 4-pin designs instead of 6, and I broke those 4 pins. Then I switched to 6-pin, which was the newest stuff at the time, which was well over a year ago. And now I hear they use an 8-pin design, which is even stronger. Obviously, I didn't break any of those pins this time. It looks like actually these are the ring gear bolts. And as you can see there, one is completely backed out. One was actually out, just chilling in the case. And shout out to Brandon from WDTO Offroad. They got a YouTube channel. He's got a Halo 30. Has had the exact same problem, and I was talking to him before I pulled this apart, and he basically called out this exact same thing, that this is what it was going to be. And sure enough, here we are, same exact problem. So basically, I'm going to buzz out all these bolts for the ring gear, and one of these was already out, and one of them was holding on by like one thread. All the bolts look fine, to be honest. I'm going to buzz them all out here, and hopefully I can tap this ring gear down and take a look at it, make sure that none of the threads look jacked up on the ring gear itself. And essentially, with those bolts being backed out, if this makes any sense, it's not allowing these pins and this collar to seat down into here, which is what locks the diff. So those bolts were hitting here, causing this plate to not lock in. Now, as an outsider, I don't know if that makes total sense. I'm trying to explain it the best I can, but basically that's why I wasn't locking in, because the ring gear bolts backed out. Now, I will take responsibility for this, as when I changed from the 4-pin diff to the 6-pin diff, I did have all this apart, and I mean, I torqued it down, but maybe Loctite wasn't used or the correct Loctite. I don't know exactly, but I followed the torque specs. Anyways, here we are. I'm gonna Loctite the stuff now, and I wouldn't call this a failure to Halo. Maybe just a honest mistake on my end. But I have heard a couple different people now that have had their ring gear bolts back out. So I don't know if they're factory Loctited. I mean, this diff has been around the block for, I mean, I think almost 2 years now. So quite a bit of time in my opinion. So maybe it's a somewhat common thing if they're not Loctited. I don't know the cause of it, but the bottom line is that's the problem. It didn't really tear anything up. As you can see here, the ring gear itself looks great. There's no teeth taken out of the ring gear. From what I can see in the spiders, everything looks fine. The case itself looks fine. The pinion gear looks fine. As I spin it, everything looks fine in the pinion. I'm gonna buzz those bolts out, bang the ring gear off, and take a look at the threads. All right, guys, we're back a week later, throwing this thing back together. So we pressed 2 more pins in this guy here. So, yeah, mo better. But basically, the actuator pushes this collar out this way, which is towards the diff, in regard pushing this into those holes. And as the spiders kind of lock up, or spiders roll and line up, you can kind of see the holes. So basically, when you put your diff lock switch into diff lock with the Halo 30, you kind of wait a second and you're waiting for all this to line up. So it lines up with the first set of holes there. And then it's kind of hitting one set of the spiders, and then as he rolls through, I don't think you can have this through halfway, right? Oh, there it goes. So then that's fully locked. So I know when I pulled this apart, I said this was 100% my fault for potentially not putting Loctite on the bolts. It's hard to tell. I didn't really see Loctite on the threads, but I do want to add, when I went to order these new bolts, so I put new bolts in it just to make sure the threads were all legit and everything was good on that end. It literally says on the Halo site, like, oh, get the upgraded diff bolts, will not loosen, or something like that. And then I talked to Halo themselves, and in the first generation diffs, which is what this is, they didn't have like the right washers or something, and it wasn't really noted that they needed to be like red Loctited, like legitimate, all that stuff. So went ahead, got the bolt upgrade kit, added the 2 extra pins, Loctited the crap out of everything, put Loctite in the ring gear holes and on the bolts. So should be good to go. Did the star pattern 3 to 5 times at 35 foot-pounds per Halo. And
it's like the first time the torque wrench has seen anything in like 2 years.
I torqued something else one time. Oh, I think it was my...
One time.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it was.
No. Had to dust her off, you know. This bad girl. Usually we just go by Ugga Duggas around here, which, yeah, I'm sure most of you guys do too. But I'd really prefer if these diff bolts didn't come back out. I mean, that was less than ideal. So, anyways, pretty self-explanatory from here. I mean, I showed you guys how I was tearing the whole rig down. There she lies over here in the same condition. We're gonna get to throwing this diff back in, and if we have any issues, I'll let you guys know. But it should be pretty easy, so we're gonna get to that. All right, well, we got it thrown back together. Everything worked as it should. As you can see in this clip, it's spinning all 4 tires now, so we were good to go. Threw it on the trailer, and we headed to Windrock. That's where this footage is from. So make sure you guys stay tuned and get ready for the Windrock footage. Gonna make some longer videos, kind of be like some movies. Hopefully you guys enjoy that stuff. I think they're gonna be sick. We had an epic rowdy trip, per usual. But before that, we've got a couple more shop videos. We're doing a video on Josh's Turbo S breakdown, and then we did some stuff to the Talon. So I'm gonna bang those videos out first while I work on the Windrock videos. So stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys there.